hello from United Nations headquarters in New York. Thank you very much for joining us for this interview by Africa Renewal with His Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone, President Julius Maada, who happens right now to be the President of the UN Security Council for this month of August 2024. You are pursuing this agenda, as you said, on behalf of all of Africa. You are also involved in the AU C10, pushing for these issues. Africa must have a permanent representation on the Security Council. This issue has been debated for many years. Some people have become skeptical. How is it going to work?
It is going to work. We must stay optimistic and we must give it the forward momentum it needs. It's been on the UN agenda for over 40 years, but there is new spirit. The world has changed and leaders have come and gone. What I'm trying to do is to convince my colleagues in Africa and the world at large to say the injustice that has been done to Africa cannot be accepted. We are going to celebrate 80 years of the United Nations. We cannot do that with the structure, the configuration of the Security Council as we have, which is totally unfair to us as a continent with over 1.3 billion people.
Some people will say support for your push. Support in Africa or support out of Africa. How would you gauge the kind of support you have for this idea?
Well, support from Africa should naturally come because I'm speaking on behalf of Africa. But the main issue we have is that we have the P5, the permanent members of the Security Council. We want to be in the Security Council. They are manning the gate. They have to let us in. They all have recognized the fact that Africa has been treated unfairly and that injustice must be corrected and that Africa should not necessarily wait for the total reform of the UN Security Council, but that we should be prioritized because we have made a strong case and the marginalization has gone on for too long. And so I am optimistic, and that is why I want to call on Africa to fully support this and on the rest of the world too, because we are talking about democracy, fairness, representation, and the fact that we are not there in the Security Council, in the permanent category, and even in the non-permanent category, we are underrepresented. It means that this is not a legitimate organ of the UN security of the UN. Its mandate cannot be easily executed in Africa because it is not fair, it doesn't represent our views. So that is why I strongly believe that with the necessary push and with the commitments made by all the P5 representatives, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. Do we see that light 2024, 2025, or do we wait until 2045? How soon do you think this can be realized?
I think if we all in Africa and all other groups around the world who stand for fairness, who stand for democracy, who stand for justice, come to our support, we should be able. And I want to implore my colleagues in Africa, the leadership, civil society, everybody, to give the support necessary. Like I've said, this is a club. The Security Council is being closed off to us for far too long. We are knocking, but they have not answered. I think we should knock further. And the louder the noise, I think what your question is trying to get out of me is how quickly can we do this? I think they have to see the seriousness. We have to bring it to the consciousness of the world that we have also come of age. Africa represents 54 of the 193 states that make up the United Nations. We are 1.3 billion people. We cannot just be a territory for proxy wars and be used by others. We have a voice. We know what our problems are, and we should have a say. Besides, more than 60% of the issues that are discussed in the Security Council and most of the activities are in Africa. How would you want them to be owned if we are not part of it? So the African leadership needs to wake up again and realize that we cannot be a member of a world organization and not be part of its prime organ, the Security Council, and to have veto power. This is not fair in the 21st century. And I call on all African leaders and for all those who stand for justice and democracy around the world to fight this unfairness.
During your presidency, Sierra Leone's presidency of the Council this month of August, one of the key objectives you have is to unlock Africa's full potential. How would you break this down and say, this is exactly what I mean when I'm pushing that Africa's full potential to be realized?
We are talking about enhanced representation. At the moment, we are only present in the non-permanent category. In the permanent category, there is no African representation. What we are saying is that we want to increase our number in the non-permanent category by 2, and also we are asking for 2 members in the permanent category with veto power if it is retained. We want to be a full-fledged member of this premier organ of the UN Security of the United Nations. This is where major decisions are taken, and because of our contribution to peace and security around the world, peacekeeping, I think we should be there. It is far too long. We can't be talking about this for 40 years. And that is why the question you asked is very pertinent. When is the Security Council going to recognize that they cannot keep us out of the door? They cannot keep us in oblivion. We are not part. We should be part. If we talk about democracy in our nations, which we have all catering to do, we should also practice democracy in the in an institution, the UN Security Council, that is a premier body for peace and security around the world. This is what I believe in, and this is what I'm trying to get Africans to understand. And to help me, we need more voices. We need to make our voices louder and be a voice. Let them be voices of reasoning. We want to contribute to what is happening around the world. We think we have perspectives that are pertinent. We think we have what it takes to be part of the world today, and not just be a recipient of the largest of others.
President Julius Maada of Sierra Leone, you touched on the issue of peace and security. Many of us know what Sierra Leone went through during the civil war. Gruesome crimes were committed. You and your colleagues stepped in at a certain point. Somehow you've managed to pull yourselves together So much so that when people see you now, they wouldn't believe that Sierra Leone was in a terrible conflict, in a war situation. What kind of example would you like Sierra Leone being there, ECOWAS supporting the United Nations, coming to support, to lift your country out of the ashes of war? What kind of example can Sierra Leone be to other nations around the world?
I've said that we've been to hell and back. And during our years of trials and tribulations, we learned quite a lot. And through partnership of the United Nations and many other institutions, countries around the world, we've been able to pull ourselves back from the brink of total disintegration as a nation. In all of these, we have learned quite a lot. Partnership, multilateralism, dialogue, and the need to build consensus. So what we are bringing to the table within the UN Security Council is how we can be a bridge, how we can support multilateralism as a way for peace and security around the world. We were able, after all the fighting, after all the destruction, as you've described, we resolved our problems on the table. So why did we not go to the table in the first place? Well, normally, students of conflict will say, you have to go through that stage before you get back to resolving your conflicts. But now that we know that at the end, you cannot resolve your issues on the battlefield, how do we manage the conflict in such a way that it does not create so much bitterness and destruction, but that at the end of the day, the parties will still be intact, and there will be a group to mediate and to bring them together? That bridge creation, that voice of reason is what we think we can offer the world.
Mr. President, you mentioned dialogue, mediation, and also you are seen as a big champion of the cause of women and girls. What lesson would you like us to learn from the role of Sierra Leonean women in the issues of mediation, dialogue, towards sustainable peace?
When you look at the literature concerning the war in Sierra Leone, especially its final resolution, very little is said about the role of women. As a matter of fact, women in Sierra Leone constitute more than 50% of the population. And they played a very pivotal role during the war. So they have always been positive actors in our effort to bring the country together, to restore peace. For me, it would be wrong for us to talk about development if you keep more than half of your population in the kitchen, or not empower them enough to be part of the force that is going to change the nation. So it is for that reason that I have said that women should be empowered through education. Everything that we do as men, they should be empowered to do it. And we have started with the law, which we have passed, to make sure that at least, to start with, nothing less than 30% of our cabinet, of our parliament, and all institutions in the country should be women. In corporate governance, in the public sector, that is, we have started that. And as I speak to you, more than 30% of people, of those serving as cabinet members, are women. More than 30% of those in parliament are women. And we can have women of substance by making sure that we take care of the young girls first. Make sure that they have the safe spaces and that they can embark on education, that we improve on their make them useful to themselves and the country. So it is a whole gamut of things that we have been doing to just protect the girls so that they can go through education and be part of the development process. That is too huge a number to leave if you really want to develop as a nation.
I want to move now again into this area of development, gender, climate, and youth. So first of all, I want to center on SDG 5, which is gender equality. The SDGs are supposed to be implemented. The deadline is 2030. So we are having just 6 years to go. One thing you've done that has received a lot of international publicity is that you banned child marriages, something that you advocated for. How would you sustain this going forward, whether you are in power or you are out of power?
Well, we now have an act of parliament which makes it a law. What we need to do is to create the institutions to monitor the implementation of that act, to roll it out, and to make sure that girls below the age of 18 will not be given off, the hands will not be given out there in marriage, and to make sure that also, in fact, it is a crime now, an offense to be part of that process. If you are witness to a girl being handed over in marriage that is of less than 18 years old, you are also part of that offense, and you can go into prison for nothing less than 15 years.
How challenging is it going to be to tell, we have the law, but to tell somebody that, look, this is it, you can't do it. How challenging is that?
Just allow the girl to be 18 and get married. Don't allow somebody who is less than 18, who cannot make sound decisions. Her body is not ready to be a mother. And for all of these reasons, and I will tell you, all elites in society, those who are rich are not giving up their children to get married before the age of 18. So this is a way to stop the perpetration of poverty, making sure that those who are vulnerable are not manipulated by money to give off the hands of the children in marriage. So again, we are protecting the girls. We are also tackling an aspect of poverty, and it is the sum of the cumulative impact of all of these that we are actually aiming at, to make sure that we, in the first place, maybe I forgot to tell you, my government is a human capital development government administration. Human capital, because when you talk about Sierra Leone, you will be talking about diamonds, gold, and all of these things. I have said to my nation, yes, these are precious minerals, natural resources, but the most important resources we have in this country are the people. And therefore, the person born in a village, when educated, becomes useful not only to him or herself, but to the community, the country, and maybe the world. And therefore, that investment into that human being to transform him or her from being a villager, a poor person, to being rich in mind, and to be able to contribute to national, personal, national, and global development is through education. So this is why everything that we have been doing has been around education, because in the 21st century, we are nothing. We cannot be a meaningful part of this century if we are not educated. And it is an injustice to not give that opportunity to the women of Sierra Leone.
I just want to move to the matter of climate change, insecurity, I remember news stories of severe flooding and mudslides affecting people in Freetown, maybe because more rainfall. And this whole issue of climate change is affecting vulnerable groups more, women and children in particular. What is Sierra Leone doing, or what can Africa do collectively to address the damaging effects of climate change?
Sierra Leone is one of the vulnerable countries to the adverse effect of climate change. We have very strong weather patterns that are developing lately because of climate change. And as you can see, even for those in the developed countries that have very good infrastructure, they are not coping. When it rains so heavily that it overwhelms the infrastructure. We've seen cars floating, we've seen houses, being swept away, bridges, and so on and so forth. So imagine that happening in Sierra Leone, where the infrastructure is nowhere developed, where we don't have, Freetown itself is sitting on a very difficult topography, very hilly. So the necessary infrastructure to channel the water when it rains heavily into the sea are not necessarily there. The city is overcrowded. And even in those cases where we don't have overcrowding, the volume of rain is so heavy that it's overwhelming the gutters, and it's just destroying. We are seeing this from California, where you have the fires, to China, where you have flooding, and Russia, and everywhere. So we are dealing with ours by what we call climate action. Every individual should be involved in this. We should be educated about the fact that the impact of climate change is here. And the little actions we take, making sure that there's forest cover, making sure that we clean our drainages so that the water can flow easily, making sure that we don't just fell the trees. These are the things that we are doing. And I remember just 4 days ago, before I left, there was a huge campaign to plant trees, just to make sure that we are protected. So this is what we have been doing as a nation. And mitigation measures, there are a lot of them, and we are not keeping these in Freetown, just in Freetown. We are taking these to even the villages, because really climate action should be localized, because a lot of them, what happens in the city goes into the news, but a lot of small villages and towns are being underwater without us knowing. So we want to be able to holistically approach this by making sure that we take the necessary mitigation measures and climate action, or take it to the people, let them own it, and know that we have to be able to go through this, and their individual actions are very, very necessary.
His Excellency President Julius Maada of Sierra Leone, here at UN headquarters, because Sierra Leone has the monthly presidency of the Security Council, and he's come here to make the case for Africa. Thank you.